And we're back, folks. We're moving on ahead with our remaining sessions of the day, with even more insightful presentations from incredible humans. Let's kick off our afternoon sessions with Deception Decoded. Please welcome our esteemed speakers, Hui Wang, Sirisha Kadamala-Kalva, Charles Feary, Dan Schiebler, and Hilary Gosher to the stage, as they talk us through ways to use AI to mitigate risk and fraud for our 7th session of the day.
So, what better way to get started after lunch? I know you all have a food slump. So we're going to talk about exciting stuff like malicious attacks, fraud, bad actors doing bad things. And we have a great panel to talk about that, people who deal with this every day of their lives. So starting with Charles. Charles, do you want to quickly make introductions as to why are you qualified to be up here, and what do you do all day, every day to help make sure the rest of us are safe?
All right, thank you. I am Charles Feary. I am a subject matter expert for AI and ML innovation at JP Morgan Chase. So I am actually part of the global architecture team. In that team, we actually worry about things like how to actually land technologies and to make sure that those technologies actually land safely within the enterprise architecture. So on a day-to-day, I'm actually doing AI ML, but also looking at how that AI ML applies to the whole enterprise architecture and also the governance layer. Yeah.
Hello, hi, my name is Hui Wang. I'm from PayPal. I manage a team called Global Analytics and Data Science with the goal to leverage data analytics, AI, ML technologies to enable our business and make our customers' experience and life better. Of course, a significant part of that is to use AI ML to enable our fraud detection or risk management system. I actually grew up as a fraud detection machine learning scientist myself. And then now, again, my team, we leverage the most advanced AI ML technology to fight fraud, to make sure we stop the bad guy in our front door so that the good people can enjoy your life without any friction.
I bought tickets on StubHub this last week, and of course I had to use PayPal, so I'm very happy to hear that it's all going to be. Dan, Abnormal Security is a portfolio company, so special and near and dear to my heart.
Hi, I'm Dan Schiebler. I'm the head of machine learning at Abnormal Security. We utilize machine learning and artificial intelligence to fight cybercrime. We protect against email attacks and account takeovers, and we protect 15% of the Fortune 500 with our security technology, and I'm really happy to talk to you all today.
Sirisha.
Hi, I'm Sirisha Kadamala-Kalva. I lead global AI investment banking at Citi, which means I help take companies public, do mergers and acquisitions and capital raising, financial advice for companies. And the reason I'm here on this panel is because I help formation as well as the evolution of the company landscape that is actually helping with the fraud detection mitigation over time. And I did a lot of transactions for companies in the predictive AI space, C3.ai, UiPath, Confluent, et cetera. And now really excited looking forward what there is for the generative AI. How does the vendor landscape look at in generative AI look like in the next few years?
So let's start with how it's changed even in the last year since quote unquote generative AI hit the highlights. AI has been around a long time. What have you been seeing in terms of the change in the threat landscape, in fraud detect, or just in fraud? What are the bad actors doing?
Yeah, I view fraud as multiple different aspects of generative AI, not just cyber, not just governance, but just taking a step back and making it very broad. There are 3 aspects to any AI story in general, whether it is generative AI or predictive AI. First one is data. Like, we have this incredible technology that can really make great sense of the data, but what are the risks? What are the security risks of it, right? Data leakage, data privacy issues, data sharing issues. And then you have governance part of it. With the outputs from these generative models, like how can we make sure that they are not homogeneous outputs and they accentuate the bias that's already there in the data? And how can you make sure that there are limited to no hallucinations? Because in financial services industry, there's not really a scope for us to say wrong things to our customers, and we cannot track that back because we are highly regulated. And then the last leg of the stool is cyber. Like we were just talking before this, like it's like in the movie Matrix. How can you stay ahead of the bad actors, right? Because everybody, generative AI, and in general, AI technologies makes good better, and bad even worse. Like how can we make sure that we stay ahead with respect to the new problems that we get in with this technology, whether it is jailbreaking technologies of models, or it could be, it is a full new vector of attack for enterprises. And how can we make sure that these models within our own four walls are not being used to compromise our systems? That is very big on our minds.
Makes perfect sense. So I'd love to get some interesting and juicy stories about what you're seeing happening on the ground without giving away, I don't want any of you to risk your reputation by saying, well, we lost 20 million, maybe 200 million. So Dan, maybe, I know you deal a lot with email, a lot with these very sophisticated phishing attacks, but maybe you could give some examples of new things that you're seeing emerging just because of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So fundamentally, what we're seeing is a shift in the ease with which attackers can employ advanced attacks. And so when an attacker is issuing a type of phishing email or an invoice fraud or a scam or extortion email, the more targeted it is to the particular recipient, the more damage it's likely to do, because the higher the chance that the recipient believes that this is a legitimate email, the higher the chance that it evades security solutions that are attempting to identify abnormalities and attempting to match patterns of previous kinds of malicious emails, and therefore the higher amount of financial cost that is dealt. And traditionally, executing an advanced attack is something that takes a lot of time and effort for threat actors to perform. They need to do a lot more research on their targets. They need to add context if they've compromised an account, for instance. Suppose I'm a threat actor. This is something that we've seen multiple times. A threat actor has compromised an account. They're now going to weaponize that account to send either malicious invoices or malware or credential phishing types of attacks to everybody who's on that account's contact list. And traditionally, if a threat actor wanted to do this, they'd need to go manually to each of these different connections, look at what the history of communication is with this person, and then craft one by one these emails that would be logical continuations of previous conversations and be what we would call a conversation continuation attack to add something that's a spear phish, what you might call it, to have a high chance of landing in a user's inbox. But what we've seen is a dramatic increase in the volume of these kinds of attacks, which is directly driven by generative AI technologies that are able to integrate the information that's already present between these communications and simply write something that's malicious that directly continues this. It's very easy to see how you could do this, simply just pasting the context of a conversation into ChatGPT and asking it, please write the next email in this chain and include a reference for the person to click on this link. Anybody can do this. It's extremely easy. And suddenly you have access to this ability to dramatically shift the trade-off for threat actors on the time that they need to put in and the amount of damage that they can do. And so these more damaging attacks are dramatically increasing in volume. We've seen humongous increases in business email compromise attacks, north of 50% in the last 6 months. That's just due to these kinds of increased ability of threat actors to utilize this technology.
Scary thought that you don't have to be sophisticated to be an attacker. You can just use OpenAI or ChatGPT. So you were nodding your head, Hui. So from your perspective, you're obviously dealing with a lot of financial services fraud or potential fraud. Are you seeing the same thing? Dramatic increase in the volume, the speed, the sophistication?
Definitely. So I think in both scale, like speed and satisfaction. For example, we've seen, like say, in some social engineering work, like a phishing email and so on, the email is actually a lot longer and nicely written. It's so easy for a fraudster to put up a website that has beautiful graphics and then use it to phish people. So again, really the attack is at a different level in both speed, scale, as well as certification. And I think the other example I can offer is, again, this generative AI platform is a powerful tool for everyone, but don't forget Froster can use it too. Like you can go to one of these platforms and ask, for example, or give me a list of piracy website. Actually, the platform will be smart enough to tell you, okay, please, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you can actually change the way you do your prompt engineering. It's okay, can you give me a list that I shouldn't go to, for example? Actually, it will start giving you answers. So just keep in mind that when this tool is access to all the good people, as well as the bad people. And then really beef up we have to beef up our door. I mean, fraud detection is always, we want to destroy the fraudster economy, right? So we want to make sure the cost of them conducting fraud is higher and higher, then we can stop them. But in this case, again, just keep in mind they have access to a very powerful tool and the cost will drop significantly.
Yeah. So all of you are sophisticated, large organizations. So, maybe Charles, you can tell us, what are leading organizations doing to protect yourselves?
So I mean, with these models, actually, they are very, very sophisticated and also very, very skilled. And pretty much you're looking at a generalist model that has actually got a lot of skills. And the thing that a lot of people are forgetting is that they're only looking at text-to-text, content moderation, right? But if you actually look at the models, they're actually trained in a multimodal fashion. That means that it's actually got voice, it's actually got pictures, and it's got skills in all these areas. So if you actually look at, okay, I've actually built my content moderation, so that is actually based on rules, then you already know that the geometry of those rules is not enough to actually cover the surface of any conversation, right? And if I actually use words that are not in the English language, right, the model will understand that, those words, because it can translate those words, but what do you do with it? So a few days ago, somebody actually demonstrated where it's like, can you actually generate me kids working at the casino or playing at the casino? And they say, oh, no, I can't do that. Basically, I'm not allowed to do that. And then changed the word casino to actually a different language, and it was actually able to actually generate that, right? And also, you also look at let's say situations where you're saying, okay, I would like to actually to actually get information about a particular topic, but that particular topic that you're talking about is actually not a topic that that you normally get. But at the end of the day, if I actually give it a set of pictures to analyze, let's say I'm looking at, okay, this is a picture of a human being. This is my picture. It will actually recognize that, okay, this is actually my picture as a celebrity. I'm not allowed to actually give you any information. But what happens if I actually put a label on that picture that says, this is not a real person? What does the model do? Because it can analyze the text, say, oh, this says that this is not a picture of a real person. Therefore, I must be able to actually do everything with it. So when you're looking at your content moderation, it means that you need to actually look at the input, the input to the model, the output from the model, but you need to treat the model itself as something that is actually not trusted, right? So it's a knowledgeable colleague, maybe, but that knowledgeable colleague can hallucinate, and also you cannot trust them because you don't know what data is actually in that particular model. Right.
So, sobering. What can organizations do? Are you buying more software? Are you building more software? Are you putting more actors on the front line? Do you have people, checking websites, so checking text? You do have a text overlay, an AI overlay. Like, how do you use AI to combat AI?
Well, so basically, if you're actually talking about a model that is actually drifting as part of its design, you need to actually start thinking about what are the boundaries of the change, what is the variance of the model that you're dealing with. So you start going to the fundamentals, things like, okay, do I actually build a set of statistical rules around this in order to actually check that that boundary, right? So if I'm looking at, I'm actually querying the model and actually looking at the responses and look at that distribution, right? I don't need to actually look at the exact words that are coming out, right, in order to actually catch the drift, right? I need to look at the clusters that actually that will actually form in that particular instance, and look at how those clusters actually drift. So in this particular case, you start looking at bounded variance, right? So these things have to actually are working either within the governance framework, which has got defined boundaries, and well, it might be as creative as it is, but you need to curtail what it can do, right? So it's the same as if you're looking at it from a physics perspective, you get a physics-informed model. So I come from a robotics background, so my area of research is humanoid robotics. In there, I've got the kinematics model. So that is actually building around the physics of the robot that you're working with. So you cannot actually ask the robot to do things that are beyond its kinematics model, and also within the frame that it actually works in. So it's the same thing that you need to apply to your models, that whatever you're doing with the model, you need to actually define the boundaries. Your specification analysis should be informed, so it is actually a knowledge-driven exercise to actually build the reference architectures. And not only that, you also need to actually continuously learn. So you need to build architectures that are actually adaptable, and just to reflect the change. If the model is actually is creative, you need to actually have an adaptive way of actually sorting that out. And the idea that you have a let's say model development life cycle that is actually stable, I think that idea got thrown away when we started looking at generative AI.
Yeah. Dan, what about your reference architecture? I mean, how do you pick up on that point?
I would say that there is a large challenge in terms of updating the models that we have deployed and the ways that we're able to build them so that they can both adapt to changing threat landscapes and adapt to the kinds of challenges that we're seeing innovation come from. Generally, I like to think about how a modeling system can adapt to new data and adapt to changes in the attack landscape really from two angles. One is the model weights themselves. This is difficult when you're working with something like generative AI, where we're familiar with some techniques like fine-tuning, where you could take a model and then bring in new data and change its behavior, and perhaps you could utilize that to adapt a model to new threat actions that attackers are applying. But this can be quite difficult. It's very easy to, in the process of doing this type of continuous training, throw out knowledge that the model had previously learned. The other way to integrate new information into a model is to change the kinds of data that you're feeding to the model itself, to basically take the features, the raw data that you're taking in and putting as the input to your model, and change that based on what you're seeing. So for instance, if you see certain kinds of malicious behavior, safe behavior, tracking that and building aggregates over that, and then utilizing that as part of your input to your model, so that your new data and new observations are feeding into the inputs of your model, make it easier for these models to adapt to trends and be able to behave in a consistent way to their previous behavior, but still be able to adapt and not be led astray by new attacker innovations.
That's fine. I mean, Hui, you're nodding your head, so I mean, I'm sure you're deep in this world.
Yeah, I totally agree with my fellow panelists. So these are, again, just keep in mind, like we talk a lot about generative AI, but it's actually one very strong tool within the broader AI world, right? So we still have a lot of advanced AI tools we can use, and that's what I'm sure like our companies are all doing. So like in PayPal, for example, we have deep learning, we have transformer-based fraud detection solutions running on live. So all these things are still at our disposal. But beyond that, I want to add 2 points. One is around what we call like automatic red teaming. The other one is actually to counter the specific threat brought by generative AI itself. So what do I mean by automatic red teaming? This is actually a technology as PayPal we've been using for many years. Again, like I said, like fraud detection is about like we want to make sure we always are ahead of fraudsters. It's a cat and mouse game. So we actually have a kind of a well-established process where our people, like our fraud investigators, intelligence officers, will be always thinking about what will fraudster do next. And then with that, we build a defense. So it's an attack and defense model we've been building and leveraging for all these years. But of course now with generative AI, there is a lot more Fluster can do. We also need to, like I said, scale our operation up. So there are a lot of research going into how do we automate this process. In the past, it's like still largely human driven, but now we really need to automate this effort and bring it to the next level. A third one is about a specific threat introduced by generative AI. So we talk about hallucination and all the threat generative AI introduced in terms of the higher risk of data loss, the security challenges and things along that. So we'll need, again, going back to our tool set, all the AI tools, including generative AI, to build tools to counter or defend ourselves against these specific threats introduced by generative AI. So again, I would say like these three dimensions are what we are doing, and I'm sure like again my fellow colleagues in the fraud detection industry are all doing.
So just to put some scale around what my fellow panelists have described, at Citi we have a business unit called Treasury and Trade Services. It's a $14 billion revenue business line each year. And we move $5 trillion worth of dollars each day across the globe, 5 trillion. And this means billions of transactions that we execute on traditional payment rails. And then all these new micro-payment digital rails are like we do $10+ million transactions per day. So this is just one facet of one business unit of one bank. And I mean, none of our companies would have existed here, large banks, if we had not used machine learning technology for decades. This is not new. Generative AI adds a newer component to it, but we all have been using machine learning. But how that's relevant for your portfolio companies or for the audience is it's imperative for us to use newest technologies to stay ahead in this game. It's imperative that with this scale, we move to the cloud, at least some portions of the banking industry. It's imperative that we stay ahead in terms of innovation, of like talking to newest companies and also collaborating with other banks in the industry, because we have yes, we are all competitors, but we have one common enemy. And the way we can share some of the anonymized data within the industry, and data is our asset, right? We can amplify that data by sharing it across. Of course, we'll not share any PII data across, but some type of anonymized, so that whether it is anti-money laundering or know your customer processes become more and more effective. So we need to join forces with what's happening individually so that collectively we are much better.
Makes sense. So where is it headed? I mean, we kind of have a sense of the threat and we see the escalation, we see the increase in velocity, the increase in just the number of threats that folks can do. So what are you excited about? Like, maybe I'll start with you. Like, what do you think AI's potential is as opposed to, you know, for nefarious means? What's the potential to combat that?
I think it's so exciting what's going on in the AI space today. Sometimes I find it hard to fall asleep in the night because of the potential there is for AI to literally transform our business. And with that, of course, comes a lot of risks that we all have been talking about. I think it's about what is coming is, I think, a very big culture shift that we need to adapt as banks. Traditionally, banks have been relatively quick adopters of new technologies out there because of the businesses, consumers, and geographical footprint. We have all kinds of customers, and the risk is very high. But I think we are entering into a phase which you can describe as cautiously optimistic, nervous type of phase, where we have to be more nimble than ever in trying out technologies and staying ahead of innovation. And how do we perpetuate that mindset within the organization. It can take 12 months to onboard a vendor. So how can we onboard a vendor very quickly to see the impact? And how can we, maybe when this technology doesn't become something that we want to use in 2-3 years, and how do we take that out and focus on other new technologies, right? That impacts budgets, that impacts how the headcount, that impacts how we just move as an organization. And typically we are all very big, we move very slow. So how can we accelerate that movement is something that's very exciting, and it's nervous at the same time.
Yeah, quite. I mean, since you're at the front of organizational reputation, if transactions fail, if there's large fraud, if there's large amounts of stolen, the reputation's at risk. So I presume there's always budget for this, but as you think about this, like how are budgets shifting? Where do you think the emphasis is going?
So looking forward, I really share the excitement actually as a technologist, right? So there are so many things happening, and we really can use technology to bring the whole world to the next level almost. I think I've read some saying Froster economy is like a third of, if we took on the Froster economy, it's like ranked number 3 in the world or something. So we as PayPal or my fellow panelists, we want to make sure we contribute as little as possible to that, and then we have to use technology to counter that. So think about like 2 things like very make me personally very excited. I will share. So one is like if you think about in all these generative algorithms are doing on a large language, right? So again, it creates such a powerful tool. Everybody is sitting on top of all the knowledge the entire humankind has had over all these years. PayPal has like a 24 years of rich history fighting fraud. We are actually at a very good position to use generative algorithm to foresee what the next thing fraudsters will do. So something like a quote unquote fraud GPT or something. So it's something along that line, right? So use our rich data to foresee the next threat, and then make it possible for us to always stay one step ahead. So that's very exciting for me. The other thing is actually about how do we build the best algorithm to detect generative AI generated content. I know, like we all read on the news, many people are trying to tackle that. I would say there are still, we can still do a lot better. I'll give you one example. My kid actually can tell which paragraph I wrote was using ChatGPT because he knows a certain word as an immigrant I will never use. So this kind of personalized detection will be very important and take us to the next level.
Well, we've hit the 0, so I'll say the word cool, which is probably not what something the panelists should say, because we're meant to be cool up here. But thank you very much. It's super interesting. All these panelists are available afterwards, because I know we just didn't even scratch the surface of this. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please join me in thanking our panelists, Hui, Sarisha, Charles, Dan, and Hillary.